It all begins with an unsettling discovery: a grainy surveillance video and a jarring audio clip. In the immediate aftermath of the tragedy, investigators pored over every frame of footage and every sound bite recorded on Libby's phone. They were convinced that hidden within these fragments were answers, secrets that had long been obscured. Detectives meticulously examined the chilling guys down the hill recording, a desperate cry from a frightened girl whose quick thinking captured the silhouette of a possible suspect in the background. The audio, barely perceptible over ambient noise, carried a heavy weight. It was as if the recording itself was a clue deliberately left behind by fate. Investigators described the audio as hauntingly out of place in an otherwise ordinary day. Advanced sound engineers spent hours isolating background noises. They enhanced whispered conversations, footsteps echoing in the cold air, and even the subtle rustle of wind through the trees. Each small auditory clue seemed to point not to an anonymous attacker, but to someone who knew the land, someone who had been intimately familiar with the quiet rhythms of Delphi. Soon after, as new technology became available, forensic teams revisited the case with renewed rigor. In a state-of-the-art lab, experts analyzed microscopic traces of DNA, scrutinized every piece of evidence for latent prints, and compared the acoustical signature of the recording to voice patterns in known criminal databases. Specialists subjected the recording to spectral analysis. They uncovered a hidden frequency, a characteristic inflection, a pitch that subtly resonated with an identifiable rhythm. It was as if the killer had left behind a fingerprint in his voice. This clue, buried under layers of static, suggested that the suspect was not an outsider, but someone who walked the same paths in Delphi every day. Fragments of biological material found on items recovered from the scene were re-examined. With cutting-edge genetic genealogy techniques, detectives were now able to narrow down familial links that had long eluded them. Each new piece of evidence sparked whispered debates in the corridors of the local sheriff's department, where the comfort of routine was upended by the eerie possibility that the killer had been hiding in plain sight. Investigative teams meticulously retraced the steps on that fateful day. Digital reconstructions of the trail, overlaid with GPS data and dated phone tower pings, helped create a timeline that began to reveal subtle anomalies. The movement patterns of a solitary figure in a faded blue jacket began to map directly onto suspicious markers, near routes that only a local could confidently navigate. In Delphi, rumors spread like wildfire. The town, still reeling from heartbreak, struggled with conflicting narratives. Community leaders held town hall meetings. Grieving families demanded answers. The local media was relentless. Every tip, no matter how vague, was given airtime. Yet, as months turned into years, each investigation stall drove public frustration higher. In intimate interviews, relatives described the profound loss they felt, each word laced with sorrow and the desperate need for justice. Libby's mother recalled how her daughter's bravery in recording the unknown voice was both a beacon of hope and a reminder of the unspeakable horror she had witnessed. Friends of Abby described her as the quiet heart of a close-knit community, someone whose artistic soul now fueled countless public tributes. Some detectives were hardened veterans who'd seen too many cases grow cold, yet this case was different. The measured quiet of Delphi hid turbulent undercurrents, and officers spoke in hushed tones about unaccounted-for leads and misdirected resources. One investigator confided, "Every day, we hoped that the next phone call would bring news, a tip that said, 'I was there that day,' and then another new clue would silence the doubts, until the day came when even hope began to fade." The mounting pressure also gave rise to heated internal debates. Some believed the case was being manipulated by outside forces. Others suspected that a bureaucratic oversight was allowing a dangerous criminal to walk free. as investigative techniques improved, so too did the realization that every scrap of evidence, no matter how small, was a stitch in the broader tapestry of the truth. Months of persistent re-examination led to moments where threads of the mystery began to intertwine. Crime lab technicians compared the obscure voice captured on Libby's phone to archived recordings from local vendors and overlooked surveillance cameras. A pattern emerged that cast a long, dark shadow on the case file. One critical thread was the identification of a blue jacket, a garment so common yet so striking in its faded hue. It was the same type of jacket seen in a surveillance clip from a nearby business on the same day. When detectives cross-referenced local employment records and daily logbooks of businesses, a new line of inquiry sprang forth. Could the jacket belong to someone who worked in or frequented Delphi's limited commercial establishments? With enhanced fingerprint analysis techniques, investigators re-examined items found at the scene, discarded wrappers, personal belongings, and even a stray button. The prints, once dismissed as mere background noise in a busy public space, now formed a mosaic that could be matched to a local resident's file. The lab technicians compared these prints with records in the national database, a painstaking process that was both time-consuming and heart-wrenching for families desperate for closure. Modern detectives pulled up surveillance footage from gas stations, local stores, and even outdoor dining areas. The digital footprint of a lone man, seen on weathered street cameras during the time of the murders, began to match the description of someone with an unremarkable yet sinister presence. Every blurry frame, every pixelated video clip added a piece to the puzzle. Witness interviews were reopened, a painstaking process that required balancing compassion with the rigidity of professional interrogation. One witness recalled a man on the trail days before the incident, his eyes darting nervously as if burdened by a secret. Another described an ominous presence at an abandoned house on the outskirts of Delphi, a location where whispers of urban legends had long circulated. Amid the mounting evidence, a breakthrough emerged from an unlikely source, a tip that had floated around for years, never taken too seriously, until new forensic techniques gave it fresh credibility. In late 2022, investigators were revisiting the personal history of local individuals with unexplained anomalies in their alibi records. That's when Richard Allen's name cropped up. Allen, a seemingly unremarkable resident of Delphi and a part-time CVS employee, had been on the periphery of the investigation from the onset. His daily routines, his whereabouts, and even his casual interactions with neighbors had earned him no particular attention. Yet, a closer look revealed troubling inconsistencies. When questioned, Allen's timeline on the day of the murders had subtle discrepancies. Not only did his path curiously intersect with the trail, but an unexpected digital timestamp from a convenience store receipt placed him dangerously close to the scene. The footprint of this man, the mundane turned sinister, began to align with the digital records once thought to be mere background chatter. The forensic reevaluation of the physical evidence uncovered a match previously overlooked. Microscopic fibers from the blue jacket found near the scene were linked to a rare fabric used exclusively in a line of work uniforms. Richard Allen's employer had records of him receiving that specific style of jacket, a detail that had initially been dismissed as coincidental. Coupled with the reassigned fingerprint analysis, the physical evidence was beginning to speak a damning language. Perhaps the most compelling piece was a near-perfect match in the acoustical analysis of the voice on the recording. New technology enabled experts to cross-reference voice prints with archived samples. In a chilling revelation, a pattern emerged that bore remarkable resemblance to recordings from interviews with Allen, all conducted under completely different circumstances. It was as if his voice, altered only slightly by time and wear, was echoing from a past he had long tried to hide. This convergence of physical evidence, digital trails, and reinterpreted witness testimonies created a crescendo of disbelief in Delphi. How could someone so ordinary slip through the cracks? Evading the unyielding scrutiny of one of America's most painful investigations, the renewed attention to the evidence led to the re-interviewing of long-forgotten witnesses. Community members who had been silent for months began to share details that, in hindsight, painted a darker picture of Allen's day-to-day behavior. One local shopkeeper recalled a man who frequently lingered around the area, his face unreadable, almost as if he were hiding a secret. A park ranger, too, mentioned strange incidents. A trail left undisturbed except for a single set of footprints that later disappeared, leaving an eerie gap in the timeline of events. These forgotten testimonies were finally seen not as coincidences, but as integral fragments of a disturbing narrative. During this phase, the investigators themselves underwent moments of doubt and introspection. In confidential interviews, several detectives admitted that the case had grown too complex, a labyrinth of misplaced clues, reluctant witnesses, and a town grappling with its own grief. Yet, in every statement, one name began to loom larger: Richard Allen. Detectives shared that every inquiry, every painstaking review of bank statements, phone records, and local social media posts seemed to converge once again on him. They faced an uphill battle. A seemingly ordinary man with the potential to upend not just the case, but the collective conscience of an entire community. Forensic teams collaborated with digital forensic experts and behavioral profilers. They assembled every scrap of data from Allen's personal life, mapping his routines with a surgeon's precision. Computer analysts reconstructed his digital footprint, piecing together emails, texts, and location data that individually appeared mundane. Until viewed as a whole, analysts pored over Allen's cell phone metadata, a series of erratic pings and location check-ins in the vicinity of the Monon High Bridge Trail coincided with the time of the murder. Social media activity, seemingly innocuous in isolation, began to suggest patterns of anxiety and evasive behavior. It wasn't long before a digital dossier of his movements was assembled, one that suggested premeditation, a mind that had carefully timed every step that day. With a composite sketch in place from the audio analysis and personal interviews, a team of criminal psychologists was brought in. They crafted a profile of a man capable of concealing his true nature behind an unassuming facade. The psychologists cited behavioral markers indicative of both impulsivity and calculated detachment, a dual personality that allowed Allen to blend into everyday life while hiding his sinister actions. His past, they revealed, contained small anomalies, broken relationships, unexplained absences, and an undercurrent of anger that, when taken together, painted him as a likely candidate for someone who could commit such a heinous act. Perhaps the most damning evidence came from an interdisciplinary forensic synthesis meeting. In a dramatic, tense session convened in a high-security lab, experts from various departments, audio, DNA, trace evidence, digital forensics, presented their findings. The meeting was charged with urgency. One forensic technician revealed that the blue jacket's fibers matched a fabric type ordered by Allen's employer months before the murders. Another expert stated that the acoustical analysis of that ominous recording left hardly any room for doubt. When the digital and physical evidence were finally examined side by side, the name Richard Allen echoed with increasing force. This session became a turning point as the accumulation of evidence reached a crescendo. Every expert in the room, regardless of their initial doubts, started to see a disturbing picture where Allen's presence was inescapable. His familiarity with the landscape, the meticulous care with which he'd hidden his secrets in plain sight, and even the oddly familiar cadence of his voice on a recording all converged to propel the investigation forward. With mounting evidence pointing toward Richard Allen, law enforcement moved swiftly but methodically. Court documents were re-examined. Phone records, witness statements, and even Allen's employment records were scrutinized for any hint of anomaly. For months, investigators maintained a tight leash on all evidence as the case was assembled like a jigsaw puzzle with far too many missing pieces. Attorneys and forensic experts worked closely to ensure that every piece of evidence was preserved. The importance of chain of custody was underscored in internal memos. Any break in the process could lead to catastrophic legal ramifications. Yet, despite these challenges, the momentum was undeniable. Each new forensic report, each re-interview, tightened the web around Allen. As whispers grew louder, the media picked up on the renewed investigation. National outlets began to air segments on how cutting-edge forensic science had unlocked hidden truths in a case that had baffled investigators for years. For a community still reeling from decades of uncertainty, the promise of justice was both a balm and a call to arms. Families organized candlelight vigils, and community leaders voiced outrage over the previous delays in the investigation. Every news report, every local radio segment, added layers of public expectation to an already high-stakes case. Not all was straightforward. Throughout the process, Allen maintained an uncanny ability to deflect questions and evade the full scope of scrutiny. His calm demeanor in public contrasted starkly with the mounting evidence against him. In isolated interviews, acquaintances recalled that he always had an excuse prepared, a rehearsed line that made his sudden, unexpected presence on the trail seem almost routine. This duplicity only added to the investigators' determination to reveal the truth behind his carefully constructed facade. Every day, as forensic teams pushed the boundaries of modern science, and as detectives reassembled the timeline of that fateful day, the truth began to emerge from the murk of uncertainty. The culmination of evidence was now undeniable. The once dismissed figure of a local resident was now center stage, poised to answer for a crime that had scarred an entire community. As investigators neared the moment of confrontation, emotional and psychological pressures mounted. Families who had long suffered the agonizing wait for answers now faced the prospect of a courtroom showdown where decades of grief would be recounted with clinical precision. In private interviews with grief counselors and family members, tears and quiet sobs painted a picture of loss that was difficult to articulate. The community's collective pain merged with a newfound hope, a hope that justice might finally prevail. Every interview was laced with both sorrow and determination, serving as a powerful reminder of what was at stake. A local pastor recalled holding hands with grieving parents as he promised, "We will not rest until every stone is turned, until your voices are heard in every courtroom." Delphi, once a haven of small-town familiarity, now found itself at the epicenter of a high-profile investigation. The uncertainty of the past years had seeded paranoia among residents. Each darkened alley, each abandoned building, even the seemingly benign chatter in the local diner took on new, sinister meanings. The investigation was no longer just a legal matter. It had become a quest for communal healing. Every new piece of evidence was a step toward reclaiming a sense of safety that had been brutally shattered. For the detectives who had spent years chasing elusive leads, the case had become personal. Some confessed that every new development was a reminder of the pressure they faced, not just from outside media, but from their own conscience. Their relentless pursuit of truth, though often met with bureaucratic obstacles, was driven by the memory of Libby and Abby, the two lives that deserved not only remembrance but justice. Their tireless work, now bolstered by breakthroughs in forensic technology and digital analysis, stood as a testament to the indomitable spirit of those who refuse to let evil hide in plain sight. As the investigation closed in on its suspect, every piece of evidence, every painstaking re-interview, every sleepless night spent poring over forensic reports converged like the gathering storm on a dark Midwestern night. The swirling eddies of doubt and despair began to coalesce into a single damning narrative. Richard Allen, the man who had long blended into the quiet tapestry of Delphi, was no longer just a background figure. He was the embodiment of a mystery that every grieving heart in the town, every relentless detective, and every desperate family had endured over the years. Every new forensic breakthrough, every digital trail uncovered, reaffirmed that the truth could not be buried forever. And as the weight of evidence climbed steadily, the stage was set for the chilling climax. A confrontation that promised not only to answer long-held questions, but also to challenge everything the community thought it knew about justice. Just when it seemed that every piece of evidence had been meticulously gathered and was pointing unerringly toward Richard Allen, a shocking detail emerged. A detail that would challenge the very foundation of the case. Investigators, reanalyzing the audio recording from Libby's final moments, discovered an anomaly. Initially, the spectral analysis had isolated what appeared to be a single, chilling voice echoing through the cold, barren trail. However, with the advent of breakthrough audio separation techniques, experts unveiled a secret buried beneath layers of static. A second, almost imperceptible voice. This secondary voice, previously dismissed as background noise, turned out to be far too synchronized to be an accident. In it lay a cryptic whisper, a call that didn't match the profile of the known suspect. It was as if the unseen figure was deliberately hiding in plain sight, using the ambient sounds of Delphi's wilderness as their cloak. This revelation sent shockwaves through the investigative team. Was Richard Allen truly acting alone? Or was he merely the visible piece of a much larger puzzle? The startling discovery of the hidden voice was only the beginning. In the midst of re-interviews and forensic reviews, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A notebook found in the confines of Richard Allen's cell. Tucked away beneath a loose floorboard, the notebook contained a series of cryptic entries, scribbled in hurried, almost panicked handwriting. The pages detailed ambiguous references to the plan, coded dates, and peculiar symbols that hinted at a clandestine network. One entry read, "When the sky is silent, the truth speaks. Two voices, one whisper. They know, and they remain unseen." This unsettling note was far more than a rambling confession. It pointed to premeditation and an accomplice carefully shielded from view. Was this a deliberate act of misdirection, or a desperate attempt to unburden a guilt that was too heavy to bear alone? The existence of the notebook fueled heated debates among both seasoned detectives and forensic experts. Its contents challenged the established narrative. How could a local resident like Allen have devised such an elaborate scheme without the aid of a trusted partner? And if he had, why had this accomplice managed to evade suspicion for so long? The notebook became the catalyst for a new phase of the investigation, one that promised to expose possible collusion, hidden motives, and perhaps even a broader network of conspiracies that extended beyond the sleepy confines of Delphi. With these explosive new clues, the narrative of the case was forced to pivot. Viewers are now led into a multi-layered mystery, where every previously accepted fact is questioned. The digital footprints and forensic evidence that had once painted Allen as a solitary malefactor were now being re-examined under the light of this twist. The additional voice in Libby's recording suggested a double presence on the trail that day. This was not a mere anomaly. It was a clarion call to reinterrogate all of the primary evidence with fresh eyes. Detectives revisited earlier witness statements with a newfound urgency. Neighbors who described Allen as an unassuming man began to recall subtle, Inexplicable details, hushed phone calls in the dead of night, fleeting glances exchanged with shadowy figures near known community hangouts, and moments of nervous haste. Each recollection, once brushed aside, now added to the mounting evidence of collaboration and subterfuge. One witness, tearfully recalling her memory, stated, "I always felt there was something off about him. Now, I realize there might have been someone else with him, someone who stayed hidden." As word of these developments leaked to the public, Delphi was thrust back into a state of uneasy vigilance. The community, already scarred by tragedy, grappled with a new fear: that justice, as once narrowly conceived, might be tainted by a deeper, systemic betrayal. The revelation of a possible accomplice sparked whispers of cover-ups, hasty investigations, and even long-standing conflicts of interest within local law enforcement, a labyrinth of suspicion that threatened the very notion of truth in this case. Forensic psychologists and criminal profilers, now re-engaged with the case, began to explore the psychological implications of this twist. Their studies aimed to decode the duality in Alan's behavior: a man capable of a cold, detached execution of evil, yet apparently harboring secrets that hinted at a shared culpability. Profiles indicated that individuals who operate as part of a collusive unit often exhibit a complementary dynamic. One partner is overtly aggressive, while the other is disturbingly calm and calculating. The hidden voice, soft but distinct, seemed to mirror this notion. It was as if the two had played off each other, with one taking a commanding role and the other serving as the silent enforcer. This psychological interplay forced investigators to theorize. Was the hidden voice that of a mentor, an accomplice drawn into a shared delusion, or possibly the mastermind behind the entire operation? Several experts weighed in during closed-door sessions with the investigators, suggesting that the psychological profile of the case was more complex than previously assumed. When you find evidence of duality in a crime like this, one seasoned psychologist noted in a confidential meeting, it often indicates an internal struggle, a dissociative split, or even the presence of a codependent partner in crime. This twist forces us to reframe the entire narrative. This analysis deeply unsettled the investigators. If true, it could mean that the nature of the crime was fundamentally altered, making Alan not the sole perpetrator, but part of a darker duet that had long evaded detection. As this twist unraveled, the implications for the case were staggering. What had been assumed to be a straightforward investigation now morphed into an intricate labyrinth of contradictions and hidden alliances. The new evidence opened the door for appeals, internal reviews, and even calls for the re-examination of Alan's conviction. Defense attorneys argued that this overlooked voice and the damning evidence in the notebook could exonerate their client, or at least implicate him in a vastly different way than the public had been led to believe. Each discovery necessitated another look at the files, the testimonies, and the forensic reports. This wasn't just a matter of convicting a suspect. It was about unearthing a conspiracy that may have reached into the heart of the very institutions trusted by the community. The shocking twist resonated like a dark omen, a reminder that in the shadows of even the smallest town, evil can hide in plain sight, often with a partner. Now, as the investigation progressed and courtroom battles loomed on the horizon, the biggest question remained: who is the mysterious second voice, and what role did they play in the fateful events of that cold winter day? With every new theory and every uncovered detail, the narrative grew more entangled and the stakes higher. This big twist has set the stage for what will ultimately be a trial filled with unforeseen testimonies, forensic breakthroughs, and a community demanding the truth. The case is no longer just about holding one man accountable. It is now a search for justice in a tangled web of betrayal, complicity, and hidden danger. Detectives, forensic experts, and legal teams are now racing against time. trying to vindicate the pursuit of justice. On a brisk morning in early 2024, the courthouse in Delphi became the stage for a trial that would captivate a nation. The courthouse doors, heavy with the weight of history and loss, slid open to reveal a somber crowd gathered for what many hoped would finally bring closure. Under the glaring lights of the courtroom, Richard Allen sat at the defendant's table, his face a mask of stoic indifference that belied the swirling emotions around him. Prosecutors painted a chilling portrait of a man who lurked in the shadows of a quiet town, orchestrating a crime that upended the lives of two innocent teens. They invoked every piece of evidence, audio recordings capturing a voice that still haunted the collective memory of Delphi, forensic breakthroughs linking a rare fabric to the blue jacket, and the cryptic notebook that hinted at a hidden accomplice. In a surprising twist, Allen's defense team launched a counteroffensive. They argued that the evidence was not as airtight as the prosecution claimed. With pointed questions directed at every forensic expert, they sowed seeds of doubt over the reliability of modern technology and the potential contamination of critical evidence. They pointed out anomalies, a secondary voice in the recording, inconsistencies in witness timelines, and the possibility that the notebook could have been planted. For every assertion by the prosecution, the defense responded with carefully crafted counter-narratives, suggesting that Allen might be a scapegoat for a far more complex conspiracy. As the trial progressed, every witness testimony, raw with grief and determination, was juxtaposed with expert analyses that split the narrative into starkly contrasting interpretations. The jury was left to ponder whether the man before them was truly singular in his guilt or merely the convenient face of an orchestrated scheme. Outside the courtroom, the impact was seismic. Families of Liberty German and Abigail Williams, once engulfed in despair, now found themselves at the mercy of a justice system that seemed to teeter between vindication and ambiguity. Candlelight vigils dotted the nights in Delphi. Grieving families, emboldened by media coverage and public sentiment, shared personal accounts of the fear and disillusionment that had gripped their lives since the day of the murders. Libby's mother, with tears etched upon her face, declared, "This isn't just a case. It's the narrative of every parent who has ever felt powerless in the face of unthinkable tragedy." Community leaders called for transparency and accountability, arguing that if any chance of true justice was to be served, every detail needed to be re-examined. News channels from across the USA and Canada pored over the details of the trial. Talk shows, podcasts, and online forums buzzed with theories, some convinced that Richard Allen was the lone perpetrator, others maintaining that an unseen accomplice was pulling strings from the shadows. The revelation of the hidden voice and the mysterious notebook reignited debates about the intersection of technology, forensic science, and human error in high-profile cases. Within the courtroom, during the final hours of deliberation, a palpable tension filled the air. As the jury retired to deliberate, many in the public sphere questioned whether justice was about pinning blame on one man, or if it was a deeper, more intricate process of healing for a community that had lost its innocence. After days of grueling deliberations, the jury returned with their verdict. The tension in the courtroom was almost tangible, as if the very air carried the weight of every unanswered question from the past 7 years. In a moment that brought simultaneous relief and sorrow, the jury convicted Richard Allen for the murders of Liberty German and Abigail Williams. For the families and the community, it was a bittersweet moment. The courtroom erupted with muted sobs and cautious applause as the verdict was read, a formal acknowledgement of the tragedy that had upended their lives. Many in the community wept, grieving not just for the victims, but for the years lost, the unanswered questions, and the daily reminder that even the safest towns can harbor dark secrets. Some local citizens, however, voiced their continued skepticism, wondering if the conviction was merely the tip of an iceberg that had yet to be fully exposed. The questions about the possibility of an accomplice, the integrity of the evidence, and the role of systemic oversights in the investigation would continue to echo in public debates for years to come. The resolution of the trial did little to silence the critical questions, whispers of a deeper conspiracy, the unanswered mystery of the hidden voice, and the fate of the cryptic notebook left behind in the shadows continued to haunt Delphi. Was true justice achieved, or had only a single layer of the murky truth been peeled away? In the months that followed the conviction, Delphi and the nation at large found themselves reflecting deeply on the meaning of justice in the modern era. For some, the verdict marked the long-awaited closure they had fought for over endless vigils, hearings, and media storms. For others, it was a reminder that the pursuit of truth was never truly complete, that every resolved case brought forth new mysteries and deeper investigations into the human psyche. Interviews with forensic experts, legal analysts, and grief counselors provided a poignant summary of the case's legacy. They noted that while advanced forensic technology had indeed delivered a verdict, it had also opened up fresh debates on the ethics of evidence preservation, the potential for overlooked accomplices, and the human need for absolute answers. As time wore on, Delphi began the slow process of healing. Memorials were established in quiet parks and local schools, not only as a tribute to Libby and Abby, but also as a symbol of the resilience of a community that refused to succumb to fear. Each candle lit on a cold winter night was a promise that even in the midst of heart-wrenching tragedy, hope and perseverance could triumph. Even as we leave behind this chapter of anguish and resolve, the mysteries that haunt Delphi are far from over. Is justice truly served if questions linger? Do you believe that the truth of that fateful day has finally been unveiled? Or is there still a hidden chapter waiting to be discovered? Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. Your perspective could be the key to unlocking the next piece of this enduring mystery. Don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the cases that shape our world.